it in, and then we're rolling just as the perfusionist is with their pumps, kind of pumping blood. We're also running the speed of this pump, so it's kind of a balance. We're also in clinic looking at patients, kind of downloading waveforms, because the waveform tells us a lot. Like if there's a high power, that typically means there's something stuck in the pump. Or if there's a low flow, that means that the pump is sucking against that septum, which is the wall share between the RV and LV. And then we do other stuff running around the hospital and helping out whatever we can. Who has heard of what is an LVAD? Who has not? Okay. So LVAD, left ventricular assist device. LV, so basically it says left ventricle is going to support the left ventricle, not the right ventricle, not the atrium, just the left ventricle. So as you can see here, this is an example. Maybe I can go back up. We are only putting 3 types of permanent devices. We also do temporary devices. You'll never see those because those do not get out of the hospital. So they can actually ambulate in the field, but you're never going to see them out. And the pumps are actually much, much bigger. So you'll see 3 devices, which is the HeartWare, HeartMate 2, HeartMate 3. That's all there's out there here in Spokane. You're actually never going to see the pump, or I hope you never do, because that means that the chest is open. What you'll deal with is these guys here, the controllers. So I would say the practical stuff is recognizing which controller is which, and they're kind of similar. So this one's the one that came out first, the HeartMate 2. It's the white one. This is the HeartMate 3, the new one. And the only difference is that there's, see the color? One's like darker, the other one's lighter. So this is HeartMate 2, HeartMate 3. And I'll go over the pumps later. And then this is the HeartWare. So if anything that you learned today is do not do CPR unless we tell you so. And understand that there's 3 types of controllers, 3 different VADs. They're not the same. So this is an example of what the HVAD looks like, which corresponds to this guy here. So I created this model. It's kind of a small heart. Actually, these hearts that are very sick, they're maybe 4 times the size of this. And I've held those hearts, and actually I need to use both hands to carry the whole thing. So the ventricular assist device will be in the L. Can I show you stuff that's bloody? And yeah. I'll show you like a 1-minute video on how these things go in. So basically, the pump itself, they take like a chunk of apex, and then they put this guy in, and then the outflow part, which is this thing that looks like a sock, gets anastomosed to the ascending aorta. So you're taking blood from where? From the left ventricle, and then you're dumping it where? Ascending aorta, right? Okay, that's the basic stuff. If you get that, that's all LVADs. So, blah, 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 blah. So when do we put one in? Right, when the ventricle fails, when there's not enough pumping ability. Could we put one in maybe to let the heart recover? Or do we put this only in patients that are just dying and they just need something to get them to a heart transplant?
Dying.
Yes, that's one. Hopefully we get them as a referral before they're dying.
Okay.
But, so there's kind of multiple options. One is called destination therapy, which means the patient's too old to get a heart transplant. So this is it. They're stuck to this device for the rest of their life. Sometimes it could be actually a young patient, but the patient is so sensitized that it's never going to get a heart transplant. That's another option. And that's also still a destination therapy. Sometimes it's, we don't know what's going on. We're trying to, there's the patient that came with cardiogenic shock, and we're just trying to recover the heart. So we put the pump in, and then sometimes the heart recovers 2 or 3 years later, and we just take it off. So that happens too. It's not as common, but that does happen. Like for example, typically like women, when they give birth, sometimes and something happens, the myocardium gets really weak, they end up with a VAD. A couple years later, we take it out, and they're fine. What else?
So you actually physically take a piece of myocardium out. So when you take that helmet out, how How do you like patch that or repair it? Grow?
Yeah, so they patch it up, or sometimes actually they just let the pump clot. It actually clots really fast. If you remove all the anticoagulation on this patient, it just clots like that.
Okay, so just
It'll be like a metal that's in there, stuck in there forever, and then we just bury. So this thing here, sorry, it's called the drive line. And if I had this thing in me, it will be pointing kind of towards this way. And then I'll have this inside curving like that, and then you'll see maybe this piece out. So the only thing that you're ever going to see from a patient, it's a line that's always there. If it's not there, somebody cut it, and then we're in big trouble. There's nothing else we can do. So there's a line, there's a control attached to this line, and there's always two batteries, no matter which device. There's a black box or a gray box, two batteries, and then this connection. So where else was I going with this? Yeah, so what are the two type of indications? What?
how does that LVAD stay in the heart once it's in there?
So it depends on the VAD type. So if it's an HVAD, kind of like smaller like this. So these ones are called centrifugal pump, and I'll go over what that means. These ones are smaller, and they just basically.
What's the big one?
Yeah, so the actually this is the bigger one. And before this, so these are all continuous flow. There's no pulsatility. Your patient will not have a pulse. Some of them do, but most don't. They're all continuous. The ones before used to be about, so I could have, you weren't fit here, but about this big, with like two horns coming out, but we don't have that anymore. Okay, so what are the indications? Destination therapy, bridge to transplant. What's destination therapy? It may be on your test.
End of life,
Too old for transplant. Too old, end of life, nothing else. Bridge to transplant. So too old for what though? Right, right. And then bridge to something, bridge to a decision, bridge to recovery, or bridge to a heart. So those are the two indications.
How long can someone be on?
So right now we have one going for 9 years and 3 months. So I used to work for the manufacturer of this pump. These things can last forever. However, if they're not anticoagulated properly, then they get stuck in the impeller. So it depends on how well you take care of it, and it depends on the patient too. Yeah, so from this slide, I would say indications for use. Bridge to transplant, destination therapy. Okay, so again, so that's the heart. This will be kind of the apex. The pump is in here. It's secured in place by a sewing ring. And somebody asked me how the pump stays in place. There's literally where is it? I don't know if you can see it from there, but you see this white stuff here? That's actually sewn into the heart, and then it has a pin and locking mechanism. So you put the VAD in there, and then you just screw it on, and then that's how it stays in place. So I'll show you a video how that happens. Here's an example of what the actual heart looks like with that VAD. And then you can see the drive line, which is that piece that goes around the stomach and then it comes out. And then the outflow graft. It looks like that, and maybe the LV is typically like 6-point-something centimeters. Compared to like a normal one, which should be what? What does a normal LV size should look like? Yeah, 4 or 5, not something like 6, 7.
So I have a question. So you're referring to that line as a drive line. Is that like a power cord, or is that an actual like flexible drive line?
So it's a crack line, and the reason I say that because it's one of the failing components of VADs. So, and both companies do not have it right yet. So the things that fail the most in VADs is this one line, and then this part here, the outflow graft, which is this suck looking thing.
Yeah.
And I'll go over why. So it's just basically, let's see, 2, 4, 6. So 6 copper wires insulated, each individually wrapped, and they transmit. So the power that you attach to the controller is transmitted to the VAD, so you start getting those revolutions per minute. And also, to control the pump, you need this guy. There's nothing stored in the VAD itself. If you unplug it, it stops going.
Yeah.
So you get control of the pump through this line and all the power. So if this is disconnected or cut like that Grey's Anatomy episode, you're done.
So does it have like an electric motor inside it? Or is that just drive line that's just turned and then drive?
It's just 6 wires that come straight out of here. The engine of this device is inside, and I'll show you. I have a screenshot of what's inside. But yeah, this is only just copper wires, insulated. So what happens is, like, a patient starts cleaning the line because they get creative, and that has happened. And maybe they break one wire. They break one wire, we're okay. There's a fail system. There's 3 wires that run the engine. There's 3 other wires that also run it just in case. However, then that patient will have alarms for the rest of their lives that's just gonna say, hey, you did something to the drive line, you're stupid. So that's just, there's no way to shut that up.
Is there a way to fix it? Splice the wires together?
Yeah, we can only fix so much.
Oh.
Like, you have 3 and 3, right? So if you happen to nick this one from this control and then the same one on this other one, you're done. Now, if you nick maybe like different ones from both ends, maybe you can fix it. But there's only so much. And that's one of the reasons why we do pump exchanges, because there's an issue with the drive line, and also because there's a thrombus somewhere in the VAD, and I'll show you locations. So so that's actually my hand. My hand's very small, and that's the heart that I was carrying in it. That's a donor's heart. That's actually what they look like. They're very tiny. They're cute. That's ugly. It's just like when it comes out, it just looks like dead meat. So I don't know if you've seen when a heart comes out of the chest. If you leave it alone for like a little bit and then you just kind of tap it, the cardiomyocytes will start going by themselves. Those arrhythmias will just start kicking in. Like maybe only a couple of minutes. That was dead. Like there's nothing else to do with that. So I have a trick question here. So since this device is going the left ventricle, why if you have some sort of arrhythmia, does that matter? Do we care? Is the pump enough to support the whole heart, or is it just the left side? Right. So what happens if I don't get enough? So remember, we have to go from the RV, lungs, whatever, LV. If the RV is failing, are we going to get volume in the LV to start pumping stuff? No. Yeah, so we need preload. So yeah, that's pretty important. If you see an arrhythmia, yeah, the patient has an LVAD. That happened actually in the OR. People saw me sitting on a chair, but like, patient has an LVAD, it's okay. I'm like, no, it's not okay. Just get the rhythm back, please. Defibrillate, go. So it happens even at the hospital. People are not very well aware what these things do and what are they like. So just watch out for that. Okay, so this is what I was talking about, 3 VADs. HVAD, which is this guy, the centrifugal pump. And then we have the new one, which is the one we're going to be implanting the most. And this is the HeartMate 3. It's also centrifugal. And the HeartMate 2, which is axial. And I'm going to go over why one's called one and then the other one's called different. But one thing I want you to just notice from this slide is what are the 3 components you're going to see in your patient that they're wearing? Yes. And then you should have one line connected to all of that, right? If it's not connected, the pump's not going. Okay? So you see that this kind of looks like a pancake? So that thing there, it's called an impeller. And the way it rotates is a little bit different than this one. So flow goes in this way, and then it shoots out from all different places, and then it comes down here. And then the flow goes back to the ascending aorta. On the actual one, it's more like a torpedo, kind of like a screwing mechanism. So it's actually screwing itself into the blood. It's completely different. And none of them are perfect. They all have defects, and that's why there's always new designs. Not necessarily that they're smaller. There's actually new technology coming out. I was told to only go over paramedic stuff and not engineering stuff, but I'll tell you something cool about this one VAD. So remember I told you that the thing that fails the most is the driveline part, and then also the outflow graph. So this one is really cool. I like it because they were genius enough 10 years later to design this part here. So it's called a modular line. And you can basically remove it, and I'll let you play with it. So let's say that I had that patient that cut 2 wires, the wrong one because he's just out of luck, and then the line is damaged. Now they can remove this part. We go into the OR, and we have perfusionists, everything on standby. This is not something that you do. This is done in the OR, just in case it just goes into full coding crazy shit. So we can replace this line, but only in the OR in our place, not in the field. But yeah, that's an advancement of this. Now, the other thing that's cool about it is, those are simple. This is upgraded. Why? So remember I told you that there's not a pulse in these patients, or at least in the majority of them? In this one, when I turn it on, not yet, you're gonna hear like a hum, and what it's doing is actually washing inside. So it's kind of similar to this one inside, and what it does is every certain frequency, it'll spin a little faster, spin a little faster, spin a little faster. Why do you think it would do that? It's a washout, right? We're trying to prevent any crap that could be stuck in there, like fire information, clot formation. We're continuously washing it. And as of today, they have 0 incidents in pump clots with this one. However, with this one, there's a high incidence of pump clot, high stroke rate. So far, this one is doing great in the market. We'll see 3 years from now, but anyway.
How many years since that's been on the market?
So about 3. An excellent question. Why? Because, so this pump, the HVAD, it's approved for bridge to transplant and destination therapy, the same as this one. Bridge to transplant, destination therapy. This guy here is brand new. They're still going to trial for destination therapy. So it's not yet approved for DT. And when you hear about it, you're never going to see somebody here in destination. It's DT or BTT. Those are the acronyms. Okay. So, yeah. So that's the mechanism pretty much. This guy is not free floating in there. It actually has a very expensive ceramic tip here and here, and it just stays in place, and it's just rotating all the time. It's different anatomy, and then here the centrifugal is completely different too. And if you see a clot in this device, typically they happen either here or underneath it. And that magnet is so strong that because I have one at home, you grab it and just stick it to your refrigerator, you cannot pull it up like that. So that's another thing. Can you have a strong magnet close to where the VAD is? No, you don't want to do that. Actually, there's a patient that had a bag with magnets on it, and it was setting off some alarms. He didn't realize it. And it's actually really silly because the manufacturer created that bag. And they were holding it close to them, and then he's calling with this alarm, what the hell's happening? So he came in, and then we figured out there were magnets in the bags. So yeah, those pumps are sensitive to magnets. So here's an example, like really fast. So right now the patient is being bypassed, and he's gonna find a location to make that hole in the apex. So that's a sewing ring, which is where he attaches the pump to and locks it in. So he's putting bio-glue in there. Then he's making the cut for the apex. And then that's a coring tool. That's how he takes the chunk of muscle out.
Oh,
And then there's the VAD, that's the HVAD. And then next, what he'll do is that graft, he'll just sew it to the ascending aorta, and then it'll just stay in place. And then that's it. I mean, those are the chest wires. Close them up, twist them, and then he's done.
So real life time, how long is that?
24 hours. Yeah, so we have one on Friday. It's our first cart made 3. We're gonna go in at 7, and we're supposed to get out maybe at 2. We're gonna go really slowly. This is the first one. So the next thing that happens after they put the VAD in is then they actually tunnel the line. And then actually the patient gets to pick if he wants the line coming this way or if he wants it this way. At least they get a choice.
The 3 and the 2 have the same sort of components, so if you had to take one out, you just pull the 2 out, put the 3 in.
Yeah, no, they're not interchangeable. No, it's like an expensive car. Once you break it, there's no return, no refund. That's it. No, it's
You just test drive it.
yeah, no. So okay. So here's one important component. So you see the external portion of the driveline. This is actually what it looks like, and they all have a Foley anchor. Have you seen those? Kind of looks like a plastic that you wrap it around and it holds things in place. So they all have one piece of patch, so let's say that the line comes out here. And then I'll have a Foley anchor somewhere here, which is going to secure the VAD in case you pull it. So why is that important? Does it matter? I mean, just think about it. Remember that the line is tunneled, so it has a lot of room. So if you pull, it's going to kind of just pull from here. And it kind of hurts. But what's more important, I would say, is the infection. So once this patient gets an infection, it is never going to go away. They're on antibiotics forever and ever. And sometimes the infections go so bad that we have to do a debridement procedure, which looks nasty. Because they actually have to like carve all the tissue around it. And if the patient is lucky enough, the infection is not all the way up here. So that's the reason why the line is buried that way. So the longer the path, it just kind of takes longer for that infection to drive up. We've lost patients due to issues with infections. So when you are transferring a patient, when you get this patient, just look at what they're wearing. And they're not necessarily the best things to wear. So they kind of look like it. Sometimes they have a vest, and then you'll see a battery here and a battery there. It kind of looks secure, however, there's always something that's falling. So your job is to look at whatever it is they're wearing and identify those 3 things. Controller, battery, battery. Why? Because if it falls, it's going to be on you that thing got pulled, and then you'll never know that it was your fault, but how you know? Don't let it fall. That Foley anchor, in reality, is not that good at strain relieving anything. Just a piece of plastic there. It just makes you feel secure, but doesn't do anything. Here's the other thing. If you get this patient and you want to hear if the VAD is running or not, can you hear it with a stethoscope? Yeah, actually you'll hear that's all you hear. And then this is the spot where you want to hear. It's not here. It's like for women, it's right under here. For men, it's also there. So don't go up here or here or here. Just kind of find it somewhere in here. Kind of where that arrow is pointed at.
Can the patient hear that well? Like when you lay down at night?
No, they won't. The previous ones, they used to that. Actually, because those were pulsatile, and it was so bad that they couldn't even get food down. They would get nauseous. It was terrible. And you would hear the sound of those things from like down the hallway. They were not great back then, but yeah, so we went over that. That may be a question.
Are you saying like an infection from the body just rejecting the device, or just any regular infection?
Just like an infection, like just by taking a shower and just using like dirty soap, they can develop an infection. So taking a shower for these people, it's even interesting. So I don't think it's a rejection from the body per se. I would think that would be more kind of like in the area where the VAD is, not so much the line. Here is more like something they pick up on the field.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are those areas like filled with the silver gel, antibiotic kind of gel?
Yeah. Yeah, and that would go right here.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we have a protocol, and then typically the husband or wife or whoever the significant patient care is, the caregiver, they actually know how to do the dressing change. They have to, once the patient is mature enough and the site is kind of closed and doesn't look horrible, and it's not red or there's like no pus, nothing going there, they're supposed to change it once a week. And consider the significant other the expert. They'll know everything about it unless it's just like one. We have terrible ones, so actually don't quote me on that. There's patients that they don't even know what the hell's happening, and the significant other is just like they sign up for the car, and then 5 years later they don't like the car, and then the wife is going this way, I don't like him anymore. So there's all, yeah. So I would say trust the significant other if it kind of looks like they know what they're doing. It's kind of hard to gauge, but so we have one patient like this. What's the problem there? So that's the drive line. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
If we take the bag off of her, I mean, you just break the whole dress apart if that's your patient. Whatever, screw the dress. I mean, there's nothing else you can do there. And they do it. I mean, how she manages to put that in there, I don't know. Maybe it's stretchy and she passes the controller and both batteries through there. That is not smart, especially in case of an emergency. So, yeah, not good. So let's see. We talked about that. I would say that's a very important point. Just make sure you identify those three components and don't let them drop. Don't assume that your patient is even strong enough to hold them. Because some of them we have, remember I told you that this VAD has like a high stroke rate? Our patients will kind of be partially disabled because of those strokes. And they'll kind of look like they're able to do things, but they're not. Or maybe like the dexterity is not that good. Okay.
Do most patients have strokes then?
I would say recently we had a few strokes. One lady was awesome because she had like a hemorrhagic stroke, and it was so bad she couldn't even talk, move, anything, and actually she recovered. Then she came back to the hospital because she was on VTAC forever and ever. And I had to figure out what was the actual speed that she had to be on to avoid triggering that VTAC. And then after that, she had a heart transplant, and she's totally fine. So, but then there's the bad stories too. So I'll leave you with that one. So blood pressure, pulse or no pulse? This one's important. No pulse, the majority of them. Some of them do. Do you guys carry Dopplers with you? That's expensive.
One, forever.
Maybe one? Yeah, so that you could probably rarely see those. So let's say that you kind of have a pulsatile patient and then you have your typical ways of measuring. You could give me a map if you're on the phone. You could do systolic, diastolic, and kind of give me a mean between the two. That's what we're looking for. However, if you don't have a Doppler, which you don't, then what would you do? Oops. I would say that's where you go. First thing you do is you want to find your rhythm. Again, is it important for this patient to have a rhythm or no? Because they have an ELO, they're great, they're fine, they're never going to need that or RV. No. So you find that rhythm. What if the patient is in a weird rhythm? Would you leave them there? Would you treat them for it?
Would they know what their rhythm normally is?
So we and I have a slide on that. Let me.
Will they have a normal rhythm? Will they be in normal sinus rhythm like you or I? Or?
So let me go over this and then I'll go back to that slide. So if you look at arrhythmias there, VTAC and AFib are the favorite ones. Again, you obtain your EKG, use as your rhythm. If no rhythm, if we're on the phone, and I'm going to tell you how to get a hold of us, and if we tell you so, then you start chest compressions. You never go and do chest compressions on these patients. Why? You will dislodge the crap out of that device. I've seen what you guys do in the field, and you guys are monsters. No. Unless somebody on the phone that from the mechanical heart team tells you, okay, go, then you go. It's that. So all of our patients have AICDs. all of them. And we typically have pace, or actually we're trying to bring them down to 70. There's some of them at 9. So if you hook them up and you see like, oh, he's at 90, that one's actually set at 90. Majority of them are 70. So they should all kind of be that way, except one guy. What happened to that guy? One lead broke.
What's an AICD?
So it can defibrillate, and it can also set your pace. So, and most of them have one, and it's actually just one single device. And I know that we had to turn one off because he had like one issue with one lead and nobody wants to touch him. He's very delicate, and we're hoping to get him a heart, so that's why he is that way. And the doctor said that he was low risk for arrhythmia, so. So let me go back. Okay, so going back to here. So what would you do if you do get a patient and then the patient is, I don't know, not breathing? First thing you do, you go there and then you check airway. Yeah, what else? What?
Use a stethoscope, listen to that thing.
Yeah, okay, you listen to that thing and then you hear the hum. It's humming. It means it's going. If you don't hear a hum, that thing is stopped. What's another way to check that the VAD is going? I haven't gone over that. But yeah, you look at the controller. The controller will actually tell you everything that's going on with the VAD. And I'm going to set them all going and running. So if the HeartMate 2 or HeartMate 3 are going, you see that there's nothing there. That there should be a green LED on at all times if the VAD is going. If you see your patient and he's like that, you're out of luck. That pump is not going. In a scenario like that, if your patient is symptomatic, sometimes they have still like intrinsic pulsatility to get them over until you guys get them to the hospital. Sometimes they don't. If they're symptomatic and we're on the phone and we kind of figure out that the best thing is to do CPR, then by all means start after you've been instructed to do so. So if it looks like that, is it on or off? Off. If it's green, it's on. If there's nothing, it's off. Don't think that because, no, it's off. What?
No, I'm just trying to resistant sleep.
Hey, wait up.
So if we're instructed to do CPR, you guys, and the blind is dislodged, what kind of damage will that do inside?
So in all honesty, if it's like a young patient that's actually waiting for a heart and whatnot, the worst thing that you can do is dislodging the pump. Meaning that we had some sort of securing ring system here, and then you kind of pushed it out, which it could easily happen. We will have to, as soon as you get them to us, go to the OR, open up, screw it out, put it in, screw it back in, you're done. That's the best case scenario if that's the only case. Now, if you dislodge the sewing ring with the whole thing out, more than likely we're going to take the whole pump out, bring $150,000 back in, and put it back in. Yeah. So, yeah. And then again, when we're looking for a mean arterial pressure, these are kind of our ranges, and I can give you like a paper to remember what those numbers are. Have you ever listened to one of these VADs in a patient ever? Yeah, so were you able to put the stethoscope and did you hear the hum? Okay, good. Okay. Yeah, I give another class and then I actually bring patients. I'll see if I can bring patients next time here so you could listen to them. Okay, so yeah, all of them are anticoagulated. What happens if they're not? Yes, where? Anywhere. It could happen anywhere. So what happens if there could be actually a clot forming, kind of like floating around somewhere in the LV, and then zoop, it goes through the pump, and then it can either get stuck here, or it can kind of travel up, get stuck here, 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 or maybe here, it goes up to the head and stroke. So we take INR ranges seriously, and still patients don't care sometimes. But so these things in yellow are typical scenarios for low flows. I'm gonna go over that now. Maybe before I go into that. So here's the patient. Remember that patient I told you that had the heart transplant, that had the stroke? This is her. So this is me walking with her down the hallway, and this is the reason why she was hospitalized for 3 months. She would not get out of that VTAC. And I just want to show you what the monitor looked like for her. This guy here is the actual monitor for these devices, but I didn't bring him because I don't want to persuade you that you're going to have that. That is not a tool you're going to have. I can see here all kinds of stuff. You're not going to have access to that. But again, just focus on this guy. I don't know if you can see the part right there. Let's see, full display. This computer screen. There we go. Yeah.
So how was she feeling?
Oh, that crap. Like, so basically the way we were walking is she would be on like her walker, and as soon as that would, so I only let her do that because I was writing a paper so I could go to somewhere. But we also had to figure out what was the best and optimal speed for her.
For science.
For science, yes. So I did write a paper on that. So what was happening with her is she was, like, her blood pressure was crap. And that's another thing that will bring your flows down. She has a lot of blood pressure, the flows are gonna go down. If you have low blood pressure, the flows are actually gonna look fictitious and they're gonna come up. That's another thing that blood pressure does on these VADs. It works against the pump. So that's why we have a range for blood pressures and our mean arterial pressures. That's why they're there for. So we had to figure out what was the blood pressure that she had to be in. Maybe it's like a ±4 range that she couldn't get out of. And then what was the optimal VAD speed. So you notice here it says 2560. Those are revolutions per minute. It's how fast that little pancake thing I show you is going around. And the revolutions for this guy and this guy are completely different because of how they were designed. Remember, one's like a torpedo looking, the other one's like a pancake. They work differently. This actually has to spin faster to generate the same amount of flow that this does.
How about the image to the cells?
What?
Like the red blood cells, does it cause damage to them? Like, does it break down the cells or anything?
Oh yeah. So and so it does, and sometimes you'll see it in the urine color. It doesn't happen often with these devices, but in temporary devices, it is more often. It'll look like Coca-Cola down there. Yeah, and I've seen it in it. And there's one thing called the Impella. Have you heard of that? It's not these are permanent devices. It's a temporary one. It looks like a straw, maybe as thick as this finger, and then it'll have a little engine right there. So imagine when you're putting blood through that, what's gonna happen? So we see it a lot on the floor, and then you ask the sales rep, and they're like, "Yeah, I've never seen that before." It doesn't happen. Okay. Yeah. So why do you think we have a lot of gastrointestinal bleeds and nosebleeds in these patients? And because it's continuous, there's no pulse anymore. Actually, not having a pulse creates that a lot. And they found that out when they developed these pumps. And it happens very often. You'll actually see a patient that's actually losing a pint of blood through their nose. Yeah, so have you had experience with the rhino rockets? No? Or yeah, shove something up there until you get them to us, and then we'll fix it. Yeah, I guess the tax is the cheaper option. What else? So these are just like general common problems with them. I mean, for a GI bleed, I don't think there's anything you can do except to just bring them to us, kind of stabilizing if they're symptomatic. So what's your typical, maybe like 1, 2, 3, 4 when you see your patient? So you get a 911 call and you go to their place, call the paramedics. What do you guys do when you first see the patient? What's the first thing? They're down. Breathing, take a pulse. So this guy's not gonna have a pulse. Do you guys have access to pulse oximeters? Do you think you're gonna get something from there? Yes, yes, very good. Yeah, so more than likely the pulse ox is not gonna give you that much unless they're pulse attack again. Would you check if they have a rhythm? Please do. Would you start chest compressions right away?
No.
Okay. I heard like, yeah. Okay. Okay, low flow, what can you do? So these things will go off and annoy you forever if the flow drops to 2.5 liters per minute or less. What can you do? You can shut that up actually. Do you guys have access to, can you set up an IV line and give them something? What do you think you can give a patient like this? Yeah, actually that you can do. So I would say if it's somebody that's like symptomatic, this thing is low flowing, and I'll show you what flows kind of look like. Maybe like 1, or if it shows like 0 or negative, at that point, if it's negative, the flow is going in the opposite direction, believe it or not. Why? Because you have that high blood pressure going against the pump, pushing stuff in the wrong direction. So, and then we're on the phone, we're checking, we'll tell you, set up an IV line, please give them volume. But I think you guys do that, like, right? On the go? Okay, so I would say, when in doubt, low flowing, give them volume. Do you guys give platelets or blood or anything like that? Good. Why is that good? Because if you have a destination therapy versus a bridge to transplant, if you give my bridge to transplant patient a pack of platelet, it's enough to sensitize that patient and never get a heart transplant. Same thing with blood. So we don't want that. So normal saline. Normal saline? Normal saline.
Is there any problem giving a pressor?
What?
Is there any problem giving a pressor? Dopamine, epinephrine?
So when we're on the phone, I would say check with the circumstances. If we can kind of figure out what things are going like and they tell you so, yeah, you can. But they would have to give you the go for that. And these VAD coordinators are like hawks, so they will hunt you down forever if you do give them something that wasn't allowed to. So, let's see.
So when we call in, are we talking to a doctor? A nurse?
You're talking to probably one of the nurses, and when it's the off chance and I'm on call, you're talking to me or the other 2 engineers. But at that point, we've woken up the whole team. So the whole team is up, and you're talking probably to like a lot of us. By the time you reach me, I've probably talked to the doctor, then the nurse, and whatnot. So it could be a nurse, it could be an engineer, it could be a
I don't
doctor.
have a specific person on call that's going to be getting all orders and all that. You're just going to have somebody that answers the phone and it gives you the information.
So when you call, and I think on your PowerPoints, there's the number, the 481-7996 number. There's always somebody dedicated there 24/7. I happened to be on call last weekend. So this weekend is somebody else. So we all rotate every week so we get a normal life and be social. So if it's a low flow, if you're wondering what that looks like, here's the controller. It will tell you low flow call. So as soon as you see that patient and you've done your typical steps, I'm not telling you to deviate from anything, you look at the controller is telling you. If it's driveline disconnect, like there's 4 ports here, and I'm gonna go over that later. If the line here is disconnected, it's gonna yell at you until you connect it. And it will tell you driveline disconnect. If it's low battery, it'll tell you low battery. So you're gonna have to plug either one battery or the other battery in, or get a fresh one. Now, if you get a patient like this with 2 batteries plugged in and they're dead, what can you do? Right, but then so the patient should always have a backup bag with a spare controller. If the patient's not dead and the batteries are dead, what your job would be is go find that bag, and I hope that you look for the bag before you start running with the patient somewhere. So once you get the patient, remember, when transporting them, pick up the controller, pick up the 2 batteries, move them to wherever the hell you're moving them, then grab that backup bag, and then there better be a controller in there and 2 batteries. Why? Because if you're in the ambulance and the controller dies, out of luck. So, yeah, so anyway, that's a typical alarm. It's very common, actually, low flow.
Going back to what Gary said, was when would you want to give a pressor, I guess, for this patient? You're talking about if we spike their afterload, we're gonna basically drop their perfusion.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's kind of hard to gauge what the pressure point would be, because you guys don't carry a Doppler.
We have no way of really understanding.
But here's my scenario. The idea that you do a bunch of fluids to this person that's really sick already, you're throwing a bunch of fluids into their lungs.
Oh, yeah, like if you get them wet.
In terms of using like dopamine or epinephrine instead of that.
Yeah, I would say more than likely you guys are not going to give anything like that. I don't think I've heard of a scenario where you guys have. But again, I'm not being on call the whole time myself. But, I mean, if it arises, we'll figure out what it is that we're going through at that point. And if we do need for you to give a pressor, if you have the capabilities, yeah. But I would say the cases that I've seen are, you kind of show there, the patient's already dead, patient dropped the controller in the toilet, there's a nosebleed, or they just won't stop bleeding, you kind of put the tampon or rhino rocket or something up there to just keep it there. A stroke. Strokes are actually common nowadays. How can you, do you guys do like air flight, air transport, something like that? Yeah, so if you do get one of our patients and she stroked and she happened to call us 5 hours later after she noticed that headache and her vision went gone, how do you treat them typically? A normal patient with a stroke, how do you treat them? Okay. Do you think you could give a bolus of heparin in a stroke patient of ours? Right, no, right, because we don't know if it's hemorrhagic, we don't know if it's ischemic, we don't know what we're doing by adding that. So I would say most of the time you guys don't give a lot except just volume, and then just check if they have a rhythm, and then if nothing's working, then you start those chest compressions. And then you make sure you're not dropping controllers or anything because you're pulling on that drive line and you're causing an infection for life for that patient.
We still do like the whole line where it's like transcutaneous spacing for the
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not really effective.
Yeah. So the one here is what this controller looks like when it has a low flow. So they kind of look different. This one's flat, says low flow like that. This one here, you can see that, but it's a red heart. And I'll turn these on. So this light will be on, the little heart will be red, and it'll just tell you, low flow, call a hospital. Okay, so this is just general knowledge. But when there's a high power, and then you're going to be wondering, okay, what's high? You call us and then we'll tell you it's high. We have charts that we go off of based on revolutions per minute and power and pressure, and it tells us it's high. More than likely, if the power's high and it's been staying high for a while, there's something stuck in the valve. You can look up in that right corner. The impeller in the bottom has stuff on the top, and then the one in the middle has stuff all over. That's what actually a clot looks like inside of the VAD. Here's an example of an alarm that says VAD stop change controller. This you can actually help with in the field. If you're in that ambulance and this happens, VAD stop change controller. I'm gonna hope if I have time to teach you how to change your controller. Sometimes it fixes a problem, sometimes it doesn't. But we can try. And then here's a typical one that happens, connect drive line. If the drive line is disconnected, so the drive line goes in this hole right here, and these two are for power. So if this is kind of a little bit off, it's going to say connect drive line, even if it doesn't look like it's off. And I'll show you an example of it.
Do these controllers have like the number on them?
Like to call or?
Yeah, because I'm not gonna, even if you give me the number, I'm not gonna remember it 6
Oh yeah. So in their bag, they always have tags with call this number, emergency. There's like 3 tags on them. One that says who to call, and another one that says what to do in case of whatever, these alarms, and it's always on them. Remember I told you there's a fashionable one? She may not have those bags, even though we told her not to do that. So, yeah, but the backup bag should also have information, even the
Sure.
yeah, so the pages that you photocopied, those pages are always stuck in their backup bag, and they're not supposed to touch those. Okay, so remember I told you they're always anticoagulated, and where can the clot form? Basically anywhere. At the inlet of the pump, maybe it gets stuck here on top of the elevator, on top of the impeller or underneath it, or somewhere up here. We have ways to identify where the damn clot is, but we cannot assess that unless we see the patient and we download all that data. What you will see is a high power if there's something stuck in here or here. If it's here, you're actually gonna see a drop in, what do you think? And flows too, right? It's just gonna be spinning nothing if something's stuck in here. Now, if it's here, you're gonna see other things. What do you think is gonna happen if you basically just do this to the outflow, right? You just constrict it. Yeah. So high power because why? Does the pump has to go a little bit more and work a little bit harder to push something out? Yes. So so all you can tell us is literally read what the controller is saying, and we can figure out kind of like what's happening with that patient.
I don't think we've got how long do the batteries last?
So on this piece here, 6 hours, 6 hours. However, they drain kind of like at the same time, so you get 12 hours. Yeah. Same kind of like for this one. Yeah. So and they always have
Wait 2 hours to recharge.
So they're always carrying 2 on them, kind of like in this fashion. And in the backup bag, with that backup controller, there should be 2 backup batteries. Okay? So if they're low in batteries, you can change that, and then I'm going to teach you how to do that too.
One at a time, question.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. There is one trick on this controller, but you're probably not going to remember this. I'm still going to say it, but anyway. The backup here has an internal battery, which will run the VAD for 15 minutes, even if it's like this. If I plug the VAD in here, it will run it. You plug the VAD in here like this, it will not do anything. So at least the patient that has this VAD has 15 extra minutes if they forgot to charge their batteries. This one's just out of luck.
That's the heart rate.
That's a heart rate 2 and 3.
2 and 3.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we should go into like the hands-on part now.
Is it like a wall plug-in or something like that where they can dock it or something?
Yeah, so so when they go to bed and sleep, they actually don't go on 2 batteries. They plug into a wall, and then they also stay on 1 battery. They actually never carry that with them, because that's only for going to sleep. And the charger for this guy, it's this big, so you're not gonna see that unit.
They don't travel much, do they?
No, they don't, unfortunately. And they don't go like water sports or swimming. What else? Where was it? Yeah, so you're not gonna see something like a wall plug and just plug them in. You can't. What you'll see is just batteries. You're either gonna see this kind or this kind. And how do you check if there's power? They have a button, and then LED should show up and kind of tell you the charge status. Same thing as this one. They have a button. You press it, and it tells you how charged they are. Now, if the backup ones are out of battery, then you're out of luck. I mean, that's it. You can't do anything else.
How long do they take to charge? Like if you put an empty battery on the charger, what are you looking at for a time frame?
Like a couple of hours.
Couple hours.
Yeah, it's not fast. They have 8 batteries with them, so they should always have charge batteries.
Somebody at the airport, chargers.
That would be nice.
How many patients in Spokane have the VADs
We have 44.
And then have you ever had instances where you've had EMS personnel be calling you?
Yeah.
Okay, how often? I mean, I've never.
I mean,
I transported one guy
Okay.
I have with an LVAD, yeah, but I never had to call them.
You guys get called like once a month or so?
I would say, and typically it's something like a stroke. Those are the last ones I've heard.
Okay.
Stroke issues, transporting because of a stroke.
Now, if that thing goes out, it stops working completely.
Oh, chest compressions. Yeah,
So
if this thing is not
you know
going,
it's dead and you can't fix it.
yeah, chest
Am I
compressions.
waiting to call you, or am I just like? I
So like, no. So like, let's say that, you know this thing is dead, you put the stethoscope here, you kind of heard nothing's going on, you don't hear the hum, or the hum with a little extra kick, you're not hearing anything. You see the controller, that green LED is not on, that means it looks black like that. Or this guy here, instead of a thing green, it's actually something like a triangle. If none of those two indicators are on, the pump is off. Sometimes this is all electronics, it can fail. Maybe you're not seeing anything here, but then you heard and it's going, go with that. This all fails. I don't know if the patient took a shower and then he actually got the electronics wet. I don't know. We may actually tell you to change controllers there. But if you've heard, you saw, there's nothing going on, I mean,
Got an ABC, it's like, you know, you can't fix this thing right now, you tried to hook it up, you got no flow, and the patient's out.
yeah, the patient's out and they don't have any pulsatility, like you've checked, they're out. Yeah, more than likely we're gonna do start compressions then. You guys travel in twos, right? Hopefully we get one person calling, the other one starting, type of scenario.
They cut their line, we do compressions, or is that too long to wait to get them?
So we have hearts that are dead, like dead. And then we have some hearts where the aortic valve is closed shut. So what do you think is going to happen if that guy has an LVAD and that aortic valve is shut? That patient's going to be gone unless you start pushing.
This is a little random, but what if you just hogged out those valves and you just had continuous flow and the heart was just basically there doing nothing?
What was that?
Instead of, so if you take out the valve, the tricuspid, the bicuspid, or and you just had a free continuous flow going through the pump, would that be better than checking the heart rate? It's not really something I can.
Not necessarily, because remember that those valves are more like check valves, and then the only reason why those things are there is to prevent backflow.
Okay.
If we didn't have those like atrioventricular valves, that flow would go backwards. So we need some valves, even if it's a mechanical valve, we need something that's gonna prevent that flow to go backwards, so that I can get my flow from RA, RV, lungs, then heart. We need something to keep things moving forward. So.
What you might be getting at is, what if you just took the whole heart out, put a VAD into the right ventricle, one to the left ventricle?
So that's called a BiVAD.
Oh.
Biventricular assist device. It's the same VAD in the RV as in the LV, and then they're going. And yeah, those are actually out there, and you'll have two lines coming out of the patient. We do not have any like that. Otherwise, I would have brought pictures like that. But yeah,
So
Are there
their
patients who,
doesn't do anything.
the heart's not doing anything on that one yet.
would you say there's patients who get that pump stop and they still have enough of the heartbeat that
Then you don't
they
touch
stay
those.
conscious, or?
Yeah, if that patient is still conscious, and then you kind of can, some of them have pulsatility. So if you can get that pulse, don't start chest compressions.
So they're gonna feel crappy, but they might still be awake.
Yes, don't start chest compressions.
So you guys have obviously a list of who has all these in the area. And so what information do we need to get to you to identify that patient so we know all that stuff, other than name?
I was just, we know my personal life. I know where they live, who they are, who their kids are. I know. Yeah. Oh, this is
Okay.
JP. Oh, I know. Even by patient initials, I know who they are. It's only 44 of them.
Okay. Well, I'm just kind of curious because you come across one side of the street, you don't know.
Yeah, find whatever you can find on them. Oh, it's an elder patient on the street. He could be from Seattle. He could not be
Yeah.
our patient. You know, they have University of Washington. They're putting more beds than we are, so.
Is there a distance how close they are to be to Sacred, or can they be out a few hours away? I mean, they all live right here.
No, they're in Montana. They're everywhere. They're like 4 hours away, so we get air transport depending on the case. Yeah, like I would say the last one we had was a stroke patient that failed to report that she was having a horrible headache, and 4 hours later she lost her vision, and then she came in a little late. Actually, she got discharged home now, but she just needed transfer as soon as possible.
Going back to what Josh said earlier, didn't you say that CPR will dislodge the actual insertion? So
Yeah.
they bleed out if you start CPR?
Well, hopefully you're doing those, I mean, if it's the worst case scenario in the whole world, you got that one dislodged. They do dislodge. I have not seen one dislodge. But if you do that and then you break it out of place, then yeah, we're bleeding from here, but I'm hoping that you're able to supply blood somewhere by those chest compressions.
That they're dead anyway, right?
If you don't have anything,
Yeah, it's kind of hard to save these patients, and what you'll hear sometimes is, we lost one, and the call was, this patient is out, and it's on the street. He actually pulled over. He wasn't feeling well. He passed out. And then by the time somebody brought him over, he came in with chest compressions. The call was, and then we just called him because he was just out. The device was going, he was out. And the instruction was, do chest compressions. He was just not waking up to anything, and we lost him. He was dead. So, yeah, so let me get this plugged in. So here's the VAD. And then, should you change this line or no? This is the heart rate 3. No, we don't touch this line. Now, if it looks like it's coming out, which means
Connection early inside the body.
so this is outside. So this part here. So if this is the heart rate 3, which we're putting the first one in on Friday, you will actually look. This will be the part that you'll see starting from here. This kind of hangs, which is not a good score design because it's heavy, but whatever. If it looks yellow, that means it's not all the way screwed in. So what you can do, and we'll kind of be on the phone with you, just kind of screw it in. You just kind of follow directions and arrows until you cannot see it anymore. So that's kind of like one check that you can do. You can't see the yellow anymore. Now I'm going to plug this in. And we're going to see if the internal battery on this side works, because there's no battery here, right? And I told you that there's an internal battery here. Well, we'll see. So there's a line here. It's a triangle and an arrow in white. And there's another one very small right there. So you kind of have to, it won't go in if you don't line them up. So you line them up, and then you'll hear that. So it's saying there's no battery. You can kind of mute that so we can hear each other. No battery there. It's telling you yellow, yellow here. What is that? Follow the lines. Oh, whoops, there's no batteries. So how do you plug the batteries in here? This thing has an arrow. It's red. This thing here has another arrow. Is red. You line them up. It's in. Okay, why is it still beeping? Right. So if you want to be able to hear your partner, kind of click it there. And then so you can talk. Now it's telling you yellow indicator saying please connect something there. So find it and get the other battery. So red to red. Right? To pull it out, you kind of press it. It's not, there's no switching anywhere. It's just press and pull. Like if I wanted to exchange a battery, it's not going to come out just like that. Don't try. Just press and pull. Okay? So now I'm going to show you how to go from, let's say you have that scenario where you got the patient and the patient was fine. You're kind of just transporting them. Let's just say it's a best case scenario. And you're in the ambulance and the controller fails because you're shit out of luck. You need to change that controller. If it says controller failed, you will change the controller. And the controller will tell you, here's the screen. So if you press the button here, there's only one button here, that's a square. That's the one you press to find out information about this guy. It tells you the RPMs, how fast that thing is spinning. It tells you liters per minute. So this patient is at 2.7 liters per minute. Is that low or high? Yeah, that's pretty low. So these guys typically fall like around 4 and 5. That's kind of low. If you keep going, it's going to give you a bunch of other information that's not useful. I would say pump speed, pump flow, pump power. That's it. Everything else is just stuff that you're not going to need in the field. So let's pretend that the message is pump failed and that green LED is gone. The green LED is gone. What's happening? Right, and then you actually check with your stethoscope that the pump is not making any noises. I don't know if you're able to hear. I don't know if you're able to hear. Can you hear this? Yeah. Kind of have to get close in here, but you'll hear a and that's the washing mechanism of this pump. You're not going to hear that in any of the other VADs, only the HeartMate 3. And it's just washing that internal area so that there's no clot forming. Okay.
Any issues with like heat dissipation?
So when there's a clot in there, the pump power will go up. And we did have one patient when we had to exchange it, so there was a clot actually in the VAD. And the pump was so hot that the surgeon, that his hand got burned. Yeah, so yeah, it does, it goes crazy high when there's actually a clot in there and nobody has looked at it for a while.
Did that burn the heart at all? Like burn the heart?
I mean,
Did it already?
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's burning. Yeah, the patient could feel it. Actually, we asked the patient what he felt like. It was something, he said something burning, but he couldn't figure out that it was bad, that was that hot. So, okay, so I'm gonna go from this controller to a backup one. So remember, your patient will have this somewhere stored away in a bag with a bunch of pills, a bunch of crap. Just take it all out, get this thing out. They may not have 2 batteries with them. Most of them do. Some of them are stubborn and don't carry anything. Sometimes not even these clips. These 2 guys here are battery clips. You can remove them. If that's the case, you don't panic. You remove the clips, and they're like half moons. So to put them in, you kind of have to line them up and push them in, and then lock them. So if this is your case and this is all you've got, what do? So how can I go from here to here? Connect what first?
Batteries.
A battery. Okay, so let's do that. One battery. Yes. So I'm gonna go from black to black. I'm gonna look at the half moons and kind of, well, it's not gonna work, right? So what can I use?
Battery pack.
Yeah, this thing, guys, the clip. So transfer the whole thing, line it up. So okay, we got one. Patient's still down. What's the next step? Drive line. Yes, so drive line next. Which one's the drive line? The one that looks different than the other 2, right? So this guy. So to take it out, you open the window, press the button. If you don't press it, it's not gonna come out. Cool. And this thing will go off forever. You can mute it.
So now his pump's not working anymore, right? Did you just unhook the drive line?
And I'm burning time here talking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yes. So you gotta be like way faster. So then you find that other controller. Check out the back, right? Look for what? The arrow to the arrow. Line them up and then push. Close. Now what?
Mute it.
Mute it. Okay. And second battery, right? Because it's telling you yellow here. That means there's something missing there. So you heal the patient. Is this patient dead?
No.
You should know that because there's an LED, it's green and it's going. So the patient's not, I mean, at least the LVAD's gone. You need to find the patient has a rhythm, all that. But if it has a rhythm, if it's green, probably it's taking that. So, okay, so we can change it to the other one. So, unmute that. So we've transferred the patient over. the LED is green, the batteries are on, there's no lights here indicating plug something in there, you're good. Now, this here, we've gotten calls from you guys saying, how do I shut this up? So it will not shut up if you still have batteries plugged in. Right now, there's no batteries. More than likely, you're gonna be working with more equipment that is necessary. But if you've unplugged the batteries, and only once you've unplugged them, you can keep this button pressed, do that. It says hold until it doesn't say hold anymore. Now it's off. Why? You can mute it, and it's gonna come back on. You can mute it again, and it's gonna annoy you until you get to a hospital. So that's how you turn it off. So that's this VAD.
You don't have to turn it back on if you were to plug batteries in, it automatically turns on?
It automatically goes, yeah. So now this one, and then I'll just set something aside and you guys can play with it if you want to. Okay, so again, this is the HVAD. And I'm not gonna go over the heart rate too because it's the exact same thing. The controller is the same, the batteries are the same. The only thing that looks different is the pump and that external piece of line that you can change, but you will not, right? Okay. So this one has 4 connections. It's kind of like a little bit more confusing of like where things go. But if you pay attention to what the cables look like the anatomy of the cable per se, you can kind of figure out that this is not gonna go there. It's like way too big. Or there. Or there. So it only goes in one hole. Okay? There's a little red dot there, which makes things very complicated for an old person, but it's there. It's red.
Sorry, Chris.
And then there's another red dot there. Unless you align them, it's not gonna go in. So kind of align them. I'm just turning this on. And then I need 2 batteries. Batteries go up here. You notice that there's no beep here? Why? This guy doesn't have a backup battery, it's not gonna beep at you. Okay. How do you plug in the batteries? It's kind of like the same. There's an indicator there, an indicator there. Line them up and then just push it in. Okay. Okay, now these VADs are going. And how do I go from a primary controller on a hardware to a backup? What's the first thing that you transfer over? It's the same. One battery. Then? Drive line, the white line, the line that doesn't look like any other lines. Then? Okay, that's good. And that will get you, and so this thing, okay, this is a good example. So this thing is saying low flow and call. If this is your patient, you have the patient with you, what would you do? You can also mute this. They all have a little mute silencer button. Familiarize yourself with it. Click it. Okay. So this is your case, and let's say that your flows are like 1. Remember, flow should be like 4, 5. Your flow is like 1 or dropping to 0 or 0.5, something like that, and you call us, our caller tells you just give fluid. That means that literally the pump is sucking that septum, which is that wall that is shared between the LV and the RV, which is not good. Why? Because that can irritate the heart and trigger some sort of arrhythmia, which makes things worse. So yeah, give them volume. Okay, so we know how to transfer things from one to another. I'm gonna kind of go quickly here. So we go 1 battery, then we go what? Dry line. Now, this is a silencer. If you don't put it in before you remove the last battery, it's gonna go up forever. This controller is old. It didn't recognize that. So it happens. These are used. I gotta let it recognize the silencer. There's a way to do without the silencer, and I'll show you. Okay.
I won't remember that.
Yeah, that's why I would say just read the cards that are with the patient. It tells you who to call, and it tells you the steps to do things. If you are on your own and you call and nobody picked up the damn phone, which it shouldn't happen, but it tells you what to do. Anyway, okay, so let's do this. I'm gonna set one maybe on that table. I'll let you guys practice with it real quick.
Does the electronics on that interfere with our ECGs at all?
No.
You won't make it.
The only time where there's some sort of interference is when they're actually cauterizing stuff in the OR, and all I see in the flows is spikes. But I know that they're burning stuff in there, so. Okay, we're gonna go here. And I'm gonna get you guys started with this. The heart rate. Confirm that we kind of want to hear the vibration. And then you do it at the controller, and then you're gonna go from the primary to the backup.
Greg, you know how that already works?
I'm gonna set one here. So you guys are gonna do the same, play with it. Pull this hard, you take them up and you get everybody with cold water. Here's the other controller. So just play with it. Go from like the primary to backup, and then also one of those. I don't have any more batteries, but yeah, it's just a model. Yeah. Yeah, let's maybe switch to those two, or do you want to play with this?
Oh, that is hilarious.
So that's our RB2. Literally, those two are information that's in, the LV and out, which is that LV.
It's not real?
And that's the connection. So this is what you need to identify on this old one. It just used like a button. So you would have to, I actually can play with this. You see that? Which is very used and abused. Kind of line them up.
So that's just using the left.
Sit down, rest, and pull. So maybe just like this again.
What's the odds of this part right here?
It's very unlikely that it could happen. It's very, I have not seen it yet.
All that's internal.
Yeah, that, I
Yeah.
don't think you could
Yeah,
feel
all
that.
of it is internal.
Yeah, like vibration.
I think this is something. Because it's, I don't think it's.
No.
No, that's good. And actually, if you solve them together, you can.
We're down one breath.
You also have a coding. Yep, they are.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can start it. Now you're able to try. So there's more like clips to actually get them together.
Okay.
So now, pulling a black cord.
So they use plugging and unplugging and
They're
finding
screaming with the
the
sacred heart. I'm already parched.
So my question.
That's all the side of spring too.
from here up until maybe something like maybe
It just seems like a little song.
Silence and
yeah, they pull it out. So there's that was good. And then you finish the loop by plugging the last battery in. Yeah, yeah.
I didn't even know we had any.
Yeah, we got.
Where do they all live?
Everywhere.
Are there patients now, like, I'm already parched now?
Yeah,
South.
yeah, you do have to do it. Yeah.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah.
I got parched.
I think Louis, yes.
I don't know.
Montana, sometimes closer to Bellingham area.
Oh, water pump, both going on. What is the arrow?
I would recommend maybe making it the other table. You can get a thing of extension for it.
I know. Oh, and one of those. Nope.
We can't even run an MRI on weekends.
No, I know.
You could be glad
think we're gonna
you're
have one of
right
these?
on that one and right on the other.
All right.
Yeah, so that means there's only batteries that I don't have the batteries that have it. Yeah, so those don't count. So you would just plug them in there, or it depends on what you're working. Yeah.
Don't put lotion on your hands.
Does this thing go in either one of them? Or
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, the corner with that.
You always got a little bubble in the lights, you can see.
Okay.
Right. Well, he means when you turn on. Yeah, you might not ever get a chance to do this again.
Yeah, so if you pull it, more than likely they will develop an infection. And then, the worst one I had seen
So
was
the
we
thing's
opened
the
her up,
same on
everything
each
was
side?
in there, and we had to debride her from close to the heart. She's still alive, full on antibiotics, and she still have transplant.
What climbs do you guys do?
Too
Oh,
long.
not these.
Not that. No, so it's actually, everything is actually here.
Oh.
Yeah, all the components are actually here. The only thing that's here is the alcohol which should be maybe like this. Which is that little. But actually, all the things are here.
This is exactly what goes in this one.
Yeah.
With the septic.
Oh, it's mine.
Oh, yours.
So then,
Once you remove the device.
more than likely, they're not
Let me switch. Just do the infection.
Oh.
University of Washington, I think sometimes they go to pictures like that. Yeah, we
Like
have
heart
pictures
surgeon
of
now?
like they're not supposed to do that, you fail, you hit it here.
One battery
And
drive
then
line.
the
So I'm
system
confused
gets
here.
crashed,
I mean,
the line
obviously this
was-
is the backup, so.
One quick trip to Home Depot.
Wait,
And zip ties.
They're not supposed to.
Oh, is it like one line?
Yeah, I would guess.
Let me get the shot here.
Or is it?
I can record it. I don't think Dr. would allow like anything real time.
Whoops.
Yeah.
I was wrong.
Yeah, like the water right when I was recording.
Well, you figure it out. It's not true.
But for the first time, when we unplugged the drive, how long will
I mean, that's why we're here. So that you can yeah, remember some hearts are just like that, just like that, but that's where they didn't have anything. Like if you didn't even put one time, you didn't have. Some hearts are still okay. And actually, the pump can be off from their home until you guys take them to the
Yeah,
hospital.
just for a second. Is this like?
The risk with that is the longer it takes for us to turn that thing on, is that a clock could have already formed here. When we turn it on, boom, it will happen. Because sometimes we get them stuck, it's breaking stuff.
There we go. But that's a good point. So it was, yeah, it wasn't.
Hey, guys, 2 or 3 minutes, then real quick break, your seats. Give it up for Kelly here.
Thank you.
So before we move out, tell me about what you learned about the typical type systolic blood pressure with this. 65 to 90 or 70 to 90, somewhere that like with MAP, does that play into this thing at all? Right? So when do we start CPR?
Last resort.
Last resort, and what else about that? You're right, last resort, and what else about that? There's nothing going on in terms of control, right? There's nothing going on in terms of the condition of your baby. would your monitor show arrhythmias with this?
Yes.
Are you gonna treat that how?
Same as you would.
Absolutely, ACLS type algorithms in terms of what you do. So where would it be smart in terms of hanging on to a phone number? Maybe your cell phone, right? So the idea in terms of burying it your cell phone in case they don't have it on scene. But understand this as well. These folks do an outstanding job in terms of educating not only the patient, but the family as well. So by the time you get there and family is kind of in a tither about all this, you know there's something else that's going on with that, right? All right. Give it up for Kelly.
So one last thing, if you forget everything we went over, if you go online to this page, mylvad.com, they actually have the EMS step-by-step what to do, how to change batteries, controllers, everything, you name it. So if you want a refresher here and there, just go in there, and their instructions are like detailed like that. These are their instructions.
Just FYI, as we close out, FYI, I've seen these, I saw these 15 years ago. And there's a constant. Number one, it's change in terms of device. But the constant is that these guys always are there in terms of that phone number, always there in terms of troubleshooting along the way. That's the one constant. So if you're freaked about it, the idea that you start with that and then treat your patient as you see them.
Wasn't it a foot pump?
It was pretty close. All right, go ahead and grab a quick break. Come on back. Yeah.
So it's this one, driveway, and then the second one, just sequence. Yeah,
I actually don't. They actually come back.
Every time it does that, it washes them out.
So they have to watch it.
That's how it's right.
So you guys practice how to turn this off?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's. The batteries out and then pull out.
Okay, so the point was made of how it works.
PowerPoint, right now, what's the day look like? Do we have PowerPoints from the front? Just flat stuff. It's gonna be ACLS, you'll see what we're talking about.
Yeah, the connections are kind of.